Hello, this is Jana Montgomery, and this is 3.3 Part B regarding Japan and U.S., the war, the internment camps, and the propaganda wars. So I'm answering the questions here. Question 1A. Your overall response to the role propaganda plays in shaping perspective about people from other cultures, and do you see evidence of ethnic focused propaganda today? First of all, my overall response was at first I found myself torn. I felt like, well, we were at war. And I just kept thinking that, well, we're at war. You're not going to try and paint the enemy as, we're not going to paint Japan as this great this great place and these great people. We're at war with them, so it kind of makes sense. But then the more I read and I saw, I think what really shook me was the Time magazine article that was referenced in the um, propaganda wars video. The picture of the woman that received a skull from her enlisted husband, and it's supposed to be like a Japanese. That's just crazy to me. It's like, what part of that was supposed to be okay? From any kind of standpoint, a moral standpoint, I don't care if we are at war, it just seemed like that we went out of our way to just dehumanize the other side. And I never really thought about it before, especially all the other pictures that Japanese Americans were, or the Japanese were villainized and portrayed as monkeys and um, shown in yellow face, which I'm thinking, gee, all these elements seem really familiar from a cultural standpoint. And it's really bizarre to see another culture shown the same similar treatment as African Americans, how we were, um, sexualized or uh, cartoonized. We were buffoons. There was blackface, people dressing in blackface to make fun of black people. Um, and we were also portrayed as monkeys. We still are to this day. So it's really disturbing, but unfortunately, sadly familiar, how the United States um, and their treatment of Japan. Um, do I see evidence of ethnic focused propaganda today? Absolutely. The first thing that popped into my mind um, was this article I pulled up on this website called theconversation.com. The article is called Race of Mass Shooters Influences How the Media Covers Their Crimes, New Study Shows. So there is a very big difference between if someone shoots someone and the shooter is white versus if they are another race, black, Hispanic, how they are portrayed in the media. It is always different, even though the crimes may be exactly the same. They find that there's the big thing is the empathy gap, and that's the thing that I noticed in the media as well. Usually if you have someone that has done a shooting, like they've shot their children and their wife, if they are white, they always refer to that this person was good and this person helped out in society and he helped out the kids' school and he was a good church going guy. This was so out of character for the person. Whereas if you have a person of color that is the same crime, it's just, oh, they were terrible, they were in and out of jail, their history of domestic violence. They always bring up the negative. There's never any clarifying, nothing to reinforce that this person may have just had issues or mental illness. That's very rarely brought up. But it just changes everything. One statistic said nearly 80% of articles that describe white shooters as mentally ill also describe them as victims of society and circumstance, a tough childhood, a failed relationship, or financial struggles. So, whereas you don't see that on the flip side. And it's kind of discouraging. and it's rather sad. But it's definitely a propaganda that obviously people of color are just bad, and this is just a result of how they're raised and what they do. Whereas if white people shoot someone, they had some kind of difficulty, something pushed them over the edge, and this is why. But normally they would have never. And it's just another way to oppress, and to it's almost like the news of anyone else doing anything is reported reluctantly, whereas anything with a person of color, it's reported enthusiastically as negative. So in the segment of the last part where they were talking about we're setting a standard for the treatment of people who may have loyalties to an enemy nation, we're protecting ourselves without violating the principles of Christian decency. Really? My first thought was, so you're just saying, well, based on the fact that they could be conspiring with the enemy, we're going to lock them away, but we're not like beating them or anything. No, you took away these people's livelihood. There were people that were born here that never went to Japan. First, second generation Asian Americans never stepped foot on Japanese soil. But you just were like, well, just to protect us, we have to separate them. And that's wrong. You took away someone's freedom and liberty just for the sake of maybe they might be the enemy. That goes against everything in the Bible. Again, we've been talking about the stranger and talking about making them welcome like they're our neighbors. If anything, there should have been more consideration given to people that were born here that happen to be of Asian descent. Like, okay, we know this is happening, and this is going to be rough for you, but, we should offer our friendship and help you to go get through the time and not be harassed or be victims of anything. It just blows my mind. And, it's just like, it just seems like that's just the way of this country. If you're a perceived threat, then you are a threat. And it's just sad that, that's just so ingrained in our history. So I guess that would kind of go into my reaction to the overall message of the U.S. government. They're just kind of like, well, we got to lock them up. Again, with George Takei's witness, and I guess I'm kind of going into question four as well. But when he talks about the fact that they had to do that loyalty survey, but the loyalty survey wasn't written in a way to really figure out if you were loyal. It was just kind of like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And then he says, basically, my parents were like, no, we're not going to beg. We've been citizens of this country. And then they were sent to the rougher camp that was basically prison, because they were like, well, we're not going to beg for, the government to grant us loyalty. That's ridiculous. And I just feel like that, the propaganda, the media was so engaged in making this something believable so that the U.S. people could be like, okay, obviously they deserve to be there. It's just crazy. And finally, we'll talk about the ministry real quick. If I was to engage in some type of ministry, I think the first thing would really be involving resettling, and then trying to further relations with the community and rebuild, because you've shattered trust, you've shattered, and not even so much shattered trust, you shattered your witness. This Christ that you tell us about, he died for our sins, and he is here for all of us, was all of it except for me, right? Because just because I'm here, you locked me in a camp. So I just think that would be the first thing as far as any type of ministry, would be a rebuilding of the community, a reestablishing of the community, to truly be the hands and feet of Christ, and to be patient and to understand that, this is, to try to be more understanding towards the people, Asian people. And I guess this is hard for me because I feel like, it's a nice thought in theory, but I feel like as much as I feel bad for the Japanese and Chinese people, because everybody was lumped together, um, I feel like that as time has passed, they have, Asian Americans have been given opportunities to advance, and they're able to assimilate ease more easily into society now than African Americans still struggle for that with that. Um, as far as integration is concerned. And it's always something. It's always we're always being made to feel that we have to change and not embrace our culture and embrace who we are. And I feel like even though I feel like the Asian Americans have more of an advantage now that they are kind of exoticized, whereas not so much African Americans. So, as much as I feel like that's a ministry that would be needed in that community, but that in reality, I don't know if maybe if they ever would have felt that they could still be here in the United States and really be accepted. Um, and that's that.